KTM 690 versus AJP PR7 with a little side helping of a Husqvarna FE450. Which is the best bike? Hello, welcome. My name is Greg Villalobos. If you've not come across me on my bike before, I have an AJP PR7. There's plenty of other films about it, from me unboxing it right through to doing mods and all the rest of it up to now. This film is to see how it compares to the KTM 690. That's a question that I get asked quite a lot. People want to know how these bikes go head to head. So I don't own a KTM 690. My friend Will Linson does, and he was up last weekend with Rupert, who has got an FE450, and we thought we would take the opportunity to do a little head-to-head test. So if you want to find out what happens, watch on. Okay, so my AJP PR7 is a 2020 model. It's fairly standard-ish in all major intents and purposes. The suspension's straight out of the factory. I've not played around the ECU or anything like that. There's a few other mods, but you can find them on my previous films. Will's 690 is a 2021 model, so it's fairly new. Again, he hasn't done anything with suspension or any kind of major mods. I think he's got a different exhaust on it, and he's obviously got the Adventure Spec mini fairing up front, and the Husqvarna FE450, Rupert's done quite a lot to that bike. So out of the box, that's obviously a racing enduro bike, and he's adventurized it. He's got the rally tower up front, the fairing, he's got a big tank, and I think he's softened the suspension a bit as well. So yeah, that is a very non-standard bike. But the KTM and the AJP are fairly kind of comparable, really. So for this test, we decided to do 3 laps of some local routes, some local trails up near me in Northumberland, which is largely around Slaley Forest over to Blanchland, and that takes in a bit of forest gravel track, a bit of long, sandy, windy moorland, some road work, not motorways, but kind of B-road twisties, and then an interesting little technical climb that's only open in the summer, and that was enough to get a little bit of a sweat on. So we did the same route 3 times on the same day, same weather. It was a really great opportunity to kind of see very quickly how each bike compared to the other. Let's see how we got on. Okay, so we've just come up the seasonal TRO in Slaley. Really beautiful, heather's out, it's kind of all going purple, kind of getting into autumn colours. Really, really lovely. So I'm on my PR7, Will's on his 690, and I was just saying to Will, before I got this bike and when I was just starting out, I would have really hammered my enduro bike to get up there. And now you kind of just know to just leave it in first and just tickle it along, and it just chugs up. So we've got Rupert, who's on his FE450. So Rupert, you were just saying how you thought you might get on when you get onto one of the bigger bikes.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess because I was at the back, I was probably going a bit slower than I otherwise would, and I'm wondering how much of a struggle another 40 kilos is going to be.
And coming up there, were you in first, second gear? Like, how did you ride?
I get it up so it's better on the road. So first, it's fine. It just kind of similar to these. It just tractors up a bit. It can do, but I think it's just because the bike is light. It's more effort to go slow, I reckon, and to get have a little bit of pace and flow over stuff.
And Will, like the last time you came up here, you were on your 790.
Yeah, 790. There's a few little rocks where the 790s like this, and the rocks are like this. So you worry a bit, but it's still, I don't know how much easier this is than that actually. That's very smooth, and this is a bit aggro sometimes. That's 790 territory. You could easily get one up there.
The interesting thing here is I think whenever you jump on a new bike, it makes you realise how familiar you are with your bike, and a lot of the controls and riding position can feel, basically, you know, you go to change gear and the peg's not quite, the gear shifter's not quite where you expect it to be. You sit down and your bum hits the seat a bit earlier than you expected, and it kind of makes you realise how tuned in you are to your bike. So after that first lap, we decided to all swap bikes. So I got on the FE450, Will got on the PR7, and Rupert got on the 690. And let's see how everyone got on.
So I can't work out whether it's the seat to peg height, the pack on the rear, or the rebound dampening needs winding up a bit on this, but I'm getting kicked in the arse a bit over bumps.
No idea how to set the suspension. It's probably terribly set up, but I haven't noticed that much. This one goes down, rebounds really slowly, but then keeps going. So you sort of do that, you go over above it, it's like, boing. How are you enjoying that one?
I'm just cheating, basically, on that. It just rides itself over this stuff.
So I find the 690 quite a lot wider between the knees when you're standing up.
Wider than what?
Well, certainly than the Husky, but I'm wondering whether even the 790 feels a bit, just because, so the result is I find it harder to grip with my lower legs, and I'm having to grip more with my hands.
I'm finding the same thing on the PR7, but because the pegs are so high, my knees don't go anywhere near the seat, or I can't pinch it. I'm pinching the tank bag.
This is an important thing, test ride a bike.
I think the other thing is you get used to your bike, don't you?
You do.
So you jump on someone else's bike and everything feels slightly in the wrong place, and you don't realise how alien your bike was the first time you got on it, you know?
It was cleaner first time on the 450. It was just a bit of pace and...
Yeah, on my 690, I didn't even notice that coming up. It just kind of went up. But I guess you were the same, right? You just picked through it first time around. But on that, suddenly the rocks are very close to someone else's bike. So you're a bit worried about it.
I think that's it. There's a certain amount of like, you don't want to break someone else's bike.
You know, it's familiar. The controls are all very slightly different, particularly the foot brake and the gear shift.
I find it quite interesting taking the photos that you both at exactly the same point.
It just looked
kind of,
nope.
Yeah, but then to get going, you were like, the rear end was spinning up exactly what you did. It was exactly what you did, Will. I don't know what that means.
So the interesting thing there was, I think it was quite clear that Rupert, and really I'm focused on Rupert here because I own the PR7, Will owns his 690. All of us have spent, you know, an awful lot of thousands of pounds on our own bikes, and it's really hard not to kind of defend your own bike because you love your own bike, it's your bike. But Rupert doesn't own the PR7 and he doesn't own the 690. So the interesting thing there for me was that jumping from the FE450 onto the 690, it was really obvious that Rupert was very at home on that bike, which really says to me that the 690 is the geometry, the feel, the position, the gearing, everything is leaning very much towards an enduro bike, and everything felt very natural even if it was a bit heavier or a bit kind of wider or whatever, the general vibe was that the 690 and the Husqvarna FE450 or FE450 are quite similar bikes. And conversely, for Will getting on the PR7, it felt quite alien. So that really just says that the PR7 is quite a different, I wouldn't necessarily say it's quite a different bike, but the way it is set up, the geometry of the bike is less enduro. So that's kind of the key thing for me to take away from that. Okay, so we all swapped bikes again. Will jumped on the FE450, Rupert jumped on the PR7, and I jumped on the 690, and we did the same again. And this next section, we're really kind of going into the long, dusty, sandy track from Slaley up over into Blanchlands. So yeah, let's see how everyone got on.
So Rupert, you've just jumped on the PR7. Initially, we're not going very far, just down the track, right? What do you think?
Well, just one last thing to say about the 690 is although it weighs what 40 kilos more than my 450, I didn't really notice it. It's funny, even on that sort of technical stuff. This is a very different bike, I think. I was expecting it to be similar to the 690. It definitely feels more like an adventure bike. The geometry, I think the I'd say the front feels a little, or steering feels a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
Than both of those bikes, because they're both enduro bikes, really. Those two. I do like the engine actually. Other than that, it's a bit too soon to say, but it does feel more of a. It does feel more of a bigger bike. I think it's probably the controls and all sorts of things. It feels definitely on the 690 is more on the enduro side of things, and this is on the adventure bike.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've had a go on Will 690 before, but it definitely feels smaller, and you're much more over the front end, which is much closer to my EXC than on the PR7. You're on the Uber bike.
I'm having a whale of a time. But it's like Rupert says, they feel very similar, but this one feels softer in every way. The throttle is much more gentle, and the suspension is much more forgiving and pliant. That's probably due to settings more than anything, but I like this one.
Too early to say with this one, I'm afraid. Jury's out.
Yeah. So we'll jump on the road in a minute, and it'll be interesting for you to feel riding that on the road.
It just tractors through there.
What?
It just tractors through there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Oh.
Rupert, that's not your bike! How inconsiderate! Not quite sure what happened there. Got all out of shape.
Was it that hard bit or that hard bit?
I think it was that entirely flat bit.
Hey Will, like, I struggled up there, and then I realised I was in that traction control 2. And once I put it down to traction control 1, it was so much closer to my PR7.
Yeah,
it just smooths it and chubs up.
Yeah.
But in the TC2, I was like on, off, on, off, on, off.
Yeah.
It was much hard work.
Aggro, yeah.
So I find it really tractable. It's got grip. I find finding the seat very low, so you've got a long way to go down and come back up when you're going up and off the pegs. I wouldn't mind. I'd probably put some lower pegs on if they were available. It's hard. I'd say it's harder work. I mean, it's going to be harder work than a bike that weighs much less. I feel the weight more on here than I do on the 690. I do like it, but it's definitely more work.
How did you find that road bit?
It's definitely, the bias is different, so I think this is always going to win on the road. It's going to be a more relaxing ride for those bits between the trails, and I think the balances when it gets more technical. I don't know actually. Well, I find the really technical stuff. See how the engine just gets me up there and in first.
You see like Will shooting off there on the 450, and like here on this trail today, without a doubt, that's a really fun bike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You throw it around, get the front end up, all the rest of it. But it's just it's what you need it for. Like, would you ride from here to Wales on it? You could, but would you?
I'd be happy doing taking it down on the ferry. So riding down to Portsmouth, ferry across to northern Spain, ride around there and do it back. If I had to ride all the way back through France, I would be not happy. I could do it, but I'm not sure I'd be particularly happy on the 690 though. Doing sort of 800 miles of road wouldn't be fun. Pretty much any bike actually.
What about that?
Yeah, I think they're definitely much more durable. It's got all the power you need, I think, for this sort of thing, and just to take it easy on the road. But I mean, that it's very much that 450 lives in harmony with my 790 Adventure R. So it's I think I don't need anything bigger unless I got rid of the 790. In which case I'd probably get that or the 701.
First world problems.
Okay, there you go. 3 bikes, 3 riders. Everyone had a go on each other's bike. Just a little thing from that last section that was interesting for me is that Rupert had a GoPro Hero 9 with a Dango mount, and it had like the special mod on the lens that keeps like the horizon level. And when he was on, because I've just edited all this footage, so the footage from his camera on the 690 and the FE450 are almost identical position-wise, and you could really quickly see that the camera was pointing much further down on the PR7. I could hardly use any of that footage, but it says to me very quickly that the riding position on the PR7 is very different to those other 2 bikes. And in a kind of odd kind of way, I think that kind of sums it up. For me, you've got this line, okay, and on one side you've got road bikes, and on the other side you've got dirt bikes. So dirt bike extreme angle might be something like a KTM 300 enduro bike, like a 2-stroke or something like that. And then in the middle-ish you might have like adventure bikes, which is like the T700, the Yamaha T700 or something like that. So the FE450 sits very much at the dirt end. It's a really, really capable dirt bike that can also do road stuff. Next to that, I think you've got the KTM 690, which essentially is a heavier enduro bike. And then further along the line, you've got the AJP PR7, which is, to me, a lightweight adventure bike. And so if you were kind of asking yourself, you know, which is the one bike that can do it all, when you look at those 3 bikes side by side, the 690 is in the middle. It can do both and is a hugely capable bike. I think you've got to really ask yourself where you want to make your compromise. So if you are riding hard trails, you're riding fast, aggressively, and you want something super capable, then probably the 690 is the right bike for you. If your style of riding is more laid back, if you are doing more road work, if you are riding less aggressively and want a little bit more comfort, I think that the PR7 is a brilliant choice. Did I say brilliant? That's not very unbiased, is it? Well, it's my bike, whatever. But yeah, I think that the PR7 is maybe a better fit for you. And so, for example, as a fairly or longer term owner of the PR7, I think it's really, really happy out on the roads, and as you can see, very capable on the trails. I would choose it over the T700 any day for road work, but that's just me. I like a really light adventure bike. The next day after filming this, we went out and did some more challenging stuff. It had been raining, and I chose to take my KTM 450 enduro bike because I knew we were probably going to be dropping it and doing some more difficult stuff. But you know, I'm lucky I've got the choice between those 2 bikes. if I was going to, I don't know, ride to the south of France, would I take the PR7 or something like a GS? Yeah, probably, maybe take the GS, you know. You just got to ask yourself what you're going to be using it for. Will is a massive proponent of one bike for everything, and he's gone from a 1200 GS to a KTM 790, and now he's on a 690. So he's getting kind of lighter and smaller engine every time. If you only have one bike and you want to be able to do everything, great, yeah, KTM may well be the right choice. But again, it just depends how you want to use it. The last thing on my notes before I sign off here to think about is, I think, parts and reliability. So I've had my PR7 from new. It's got approaching like 5,000 miles on it now. I've not had any significant problems with that bike. I recently did a valve check, and one of the shims, one of the valves was slightly out of spec, so I re-shimmed it. Other than that, there's nothing been major. I am on some user groups, PR7 user groups, WhatsApp groups, and I'm aware of other owners who have had significant problems with that bike. Now, the factory worked hard to resolve those problems with them, and whenever you speak to a PR7 owner, they the general vibe is that you've got a bedding in period in which you have to get to know all the gremlins, spend a bit of time, spend a bit of money getting over them, but once you're through that, you end up with a really good bike. I've not really had to do that, but because I am in that conversation with other people, I've always got it in the back of my mind that, you know, what is the reliability going to be like with this? You can get parts. If you've got a good relationship with your dealer, you'll get them really quickly and easily. Otherwise, you can get them from the factory. However, if you've got a KTM and you need a part, you can literally go online, type in a part number, and 2 days later it'll be in your post box. That's pretty impressive, especially if you're going to be riding it in a way that you're regularly going to be braking it. So, yeah. Also, not to say that 690s don't go wrong. I think earlier ones had lots of problems with their rocker arms. I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to go into kind of the whys or whatever. On the last trip we did, me and Will were in Wales, and Will's 690 did have a small electrical fault, which didn't stop play, but it was there. The PR7 didn't have any issues at all. So, yeah, I mean, look, what a time to be alive, you know. If you're having to kind of pull your hair out over which bike to get, a PR7 or a 690, I think, you know, thank your lucky stars, really. It's a good problem to have. Whatever you choose, I hope you enjoy it. If you have got any questions, fire them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. You may have noticed that I was getting my camera out in that film, taking lots of photos. If you're into adventure motorcycle photography, have a look at Shoot and Ride. It's my newsletter that goes out every month. I have regular hints and tips, and I even send you a free sticker for subscribing. If you just want a little bit of inspiration, armchair adventure inspiration, adventure travel inspiration, have a look at some of my other films. There's some fun stuff on there. Thank you for your time. I know it's precious. I will see you soon.
So, Rupert, what you got there?
That'll be the wedge. Shaky wedge.
And what's that for?
This, you watch. Side stand on this thing's pretty tall anyway, so don't want to go much higher than that.
Magic. And what does that mean?
It means the bike looks much cooler in pictures.
Yeah. Everyone wants a straight bike for the photos.